I mean, if you're dealing with inflammation from training or pain from long efforts, endurance type efforts, then managing that inflammation while you're doing the exercise as that inflammation is increasing is a better approach than waiting till afterwards and then trying to reduce inflammation. It's similar to the way pain manifests itself. I mean, it's a lot harder to get rid of pain after it's there than it is to prevent it if you know it's coming.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. This is season 2, episode 11 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and of course freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country.
Yeah, on this show, our special guest is Floyd Landis. Floyd's of Leadville is, of course, our title sponsor. We've been talking a lot about their products, but we wanted to have Floyd on the show. He's going to break down how his company came to be and how we can use their stuff to make us better Leadville and other endurance racers.
And Roxanne Vogel is back with nutrition tips. Also, we have a new segment, Fatty, with a new guest. He is Ryan Morse of Diablo Wheelworks, professional bike mechanic, and Ryan will be helping us keep our bikes in working order.
Oh, I have so much to learn from Ryan. We've got incredible expertise on this show and, every show, honestly, Hottie, which means you and I can focus more on the philosophical aspects of this race, which is kind of what I want to do for a second right now. Ron Henion is one of the posters and listeners, posters in the Facebook group for Leadville Racers and a listener to our show, and he had a great question he recently posted on Facebook. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but here's the important part. He said, "What are some things y'all are using to stay mentally grounded during the race? What keeps you digging deep?" And I have a lot of thoughts on this, Hottie. Too many thoughts, maybe. The first one, though, is probably a big caveat. I don't have like a single unified technique, a single thought that I keep front and center in my mind during this big day of, a big course. It's so long and there's so much going on. I do a lot of different little things depending on where I am to keep me focused and positive throughout the day. I'm guessing you probably do too.
Yeah, the landscape changes, the people you pass or who pass you change, the conversations change. The great thing about Leadville is that you don't have to be focused on one thing all day. You can, in spots, enjoy the scenery, relax your mind, not your body so much, but you can relax your mind a little.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there will be moments, not many, but short moments where I kind of disappear into the race. And then there's a lot of time when I'm super focused. Let's just tick off a few of the mantras or thoughts or ideas, questions, basically the tricks you and I have used that have worked for us, and maybe a few that haven't too. So I'll go first. Early in the race, and for this one, it is more of a reminder to dial myself back, to remind myself to not go too hot. And that's super important because it is easy to burn out like a Roman candle. And it's something that Reba Rush talked about a few times in last season when in her questions for the Queen segment. It is so easy to get race fever off the starting line that I have at times completely blown myself up by the time I was 60 miles into the race, where I think I am headed for a sub-9 and wind up with a 10:30 because I am so cooked by the time I get 2/3 of the way through the thing. And I think that's very common, especially the first time you do this race and you don't know how to pace yourself. Now, with many of these races under my belt, I have a mantra. And up until I get to Twin Lakes Dam the first time, my mantra is, this race goes all day. It's easy to pedal in time too, which is nice. Just remind yourself, this race goes all day.
Move up. That's actually my first focal point of the day. Move up. That's my focus all the way to St. Kevin. So it's a little more hyper than you do, but it's temporary and it's quick. I want to get around the people that might bring me down or hold me up as we're going out of town. So move up is my mantra right away. But I try and do so without going into the red. Those are my first thoughts of the day. Move up.
Yeah, I mean, different people are going to need different kinds of information. Knowing yourself is going to make a difference. I kind of wonder with the difference in the wave start this year, if move up is going to be as important because you're going to have perhaps a little bit more breathing space to start with. But I still think it's a great idea to hold that present. Okay, my next mantra, and this is the one I use when I'm going up Columbine. And that is this. It's going to be kind of a weird one, but I tell myself over and over, this hurts everyone. I repeat this to myself, and I'm not kidding, not making this up, over and over. I pedal in time to it because it actually truly helps me feel better. The Columbine Mine climb hurts, and it is easy to take that pain personally, like it's an insult. At least for me, it feels that way. So I remind myself over and over, this hurts everyone. As I pedal, I am not the only one affected by the altitude. I'm not the only one who's on the verge of a cramp. I am not the only one worrying about my turnaround time. We're all in this together. We all chose to dedicate a lot of time and money to this day. And so when I say this hurts everyone, it's sort of almost like a statement of community, a nice little reminder to not feel sorry for myself about something that I love doing enough that I've done it every year for a couple of decades.
Mm-hmm. My mind game for going up Columbine is trying to pick out the leaders and people I might know who are coming down the mountains. This is kind of my little diversion tactic. I'm like, okay, here we are in the trees now. And I kind of like the tree section. It's really pretty in there.
Oh, yeah.
We're going up. And so what I start thinking about is, I wonder who's going to be coming down first. It's this fun game I try to play with myself. Who will I see first? And then I try to give shout outs to the names I might know, whether it be Todd Wells or one of the female racers, Larissa Connors, or whoever I might see coming down, and just give them their shout out. I always look for, in particular, Nate Whitman. Now, he's typically a top 20 guy, and when I see him, I yell out his name. And after the race, he's always said, yeah, I heard you in the trees, Hottie.
And I think that even the race leaders love getting, the shout outs. And I know for sure that us normal racers love getting those shout outs too. And it's a great way to stay positive and to, to sort of share what energy you have, collect a little bit on the return trip, cheer for folks both as you're going up Columbine and as you're coming down Columbine. Yell some encouragement at the racers and some you don't know. Everyone appreciates it. Everyone needs a little bit of a little bit of encouragement and cheering. So, last of my 3 pedaling mantras, and this is the one I use generally starting at the beginning of the power line climb, and that is, I want this. And it means a lot of different things at different moments. I want to keep going. I want to hit my finish time. I want to experience the pain that I'm subjecting myself to. I want to stay on my bike. It means all of those things. I want this. This is the day I've thought about forever. It is what I wanted and thought about while I was training, and now I'm here. I want it, and I want to keep riding, and I just, keep telling myself, I want this. And, probably last but definitely not least, it means I want to stay on my bike. And the nice thing is, even when you're off your bike, it's something that you can still talk or chant through as you're marching.
Mm-hmm. A terrific question there by Ron. In fact, on the Facebook post, Fatty, I think you noticed it turned into a bit of an argument as well regarding the use of headphones. Some folks were proposing headphones as they ride as a way to distract themselves, and that got into some bit of nasty back and forth. But in the end, you're just trying to find a little mental game, and there's going to be lots of them you're going to want to play, lots of cards you're going to want to play as the race goes on, and just be prepared to have those and go, I'm going to divert here, I'm going to refocus. I'm going to find a new carrot to hang out in front of myself to keep going. I think, Fatty, you had some great ones there. If you've got questions or topics you'd like us to pontificate on in this show, let us know. Leave a comment on the site at Leadville100podcast.com. Tweet us at Fat Cyclist and at Michael Houghton, or like Ron did, just post it on the Leadville Participants Forum.
Yeah, we love getting great questions like this from our listeners. So thanks for this one, Ron.
Fatty, I've got a new mountain bike built up, and it is a great mix of old school, new school, and no school. Old because it is a steel frame, new because it is one by, no school because I can convert it to no transmission. In other words, single speed. And because I can be either geared or single, I made sure I got some wide bars. So I went with Envy's M5 bar, which comes in at a width stock of 780.
Yeah, that is a lot of millimeters. And I've seen photos of your bike, and you've done a beautiful job building it up. I just want to tell you that. And you're 100% right about that bar. The M5 is a remarkable bar. I have it on 3 mountain bikes of mine and 2 on my wife. So we have 5 of the M5. I guess that tells you a little bit about how much I like this bar. And it is remarkable, especially if you, like I, are a standing climber, and doubly especially if you're a single speeder and really need all the leverage that this big wide bar can give you. I should point out that my wife, the Hammer, who is very strong but much narrower than I am, also uses that bar, which is conveniently marked for cutting down to whatever width that suits you. So, it doesn't have to be super wide if you have a little bit narrower of shoulders. And one more little point of trivia. The M5 bar, I think, used to be called the Sweep. It's more or less the same bar. There might be a few little changes to it. Anyway, I think that it was SWP, stands for Sweep, and that is due to the nice little 5-degree sweep back on that bar, which makes it very ergonomic, feels very easy on the hands.
In fact, you're exactly right. I had the Sweep bar previously, and then I got a new bike and scored some new bars. The Envy M5 bar in 780. Love it. You can learn more about all of Envy's wheels and components, many of which seem like they're made with the Leadville 100 in mind, but which can handle pretty much anything you throw at them on any terrain. Just go to Envy, that's ENVE.com.
Hottie, a couple of years ago, as I was hanging around at the Melanzana clothing factory and store a couple of days before the Leadville 100, I saw someone I was pretty sure I recognized. But I was a little bit embarrassed to be that guy, the one who walks up and says, hi, Floyd, I'm Fatty of FatCyclist.com, and I've poked fun at you on my blog. So I said nothing. But later in the day, I actually tweeted about this. And within a couple of minutes, Floyd DM'd me and said, hey, let's get together and have a beer. And so we went to the Leadville Brewery, PB Brewery, I think, Periodic Brewery. That's what it's called. And good place, by the way. Really like it. The thing is, Hottie, I've never, I'd kind of given Floyd a hard time over the years on my blog. So I was a little bit nervous to meet up, but we did. And I discovered he is one of the most thoughtful voices in cycling. He is a real rising star now, of course, in the CBD industry, and has a lot to say about that as well. And it was truly educational and a good chance for us to kind of meet up and put some past behind us. He's super smart, he's thoughtful, and of course now he's a true expert on CBD and the benefits that it can have for endurance cyclists like us. So when we got to season 2 of this show, asking Floyd's of Leadville to be our title sponsor, it felt like a great fit.
And it has been. Fatty and I have been using many of the Floyd's of Leadville products, so we wanted to track down the namesake of the company to get his take on racing, training, recovering, relaxing, and how CBD is integrated into all stages of getting ready for a big event like the Leadville Trail 100.
From Floyd's of Leadville, it's Floyd in Leadville. Floyd, how are you doing, man?
Doing well. Good to talk to you again.
And really good to talk with you. We got to get together when all that snow melts and it's a little bit of better riding weather, and maybe we ought to do a live show.
Yeah, let's do it. I think people need to see more of Leadville. I don't think they really understand the glory of the place.
Yeah, I love it. Hottie is going to be crewing for me this year, so the three of us can get together. It'll be a party.
I'll be handing up Floyd's of Leadville product to Fatty as he rides by.
I'll be happy to help as well.
That is great. So we want to make sure that we talk about CBD because it's definitely. I mean, I don't know if you saw this coming or if this is something that is catching you by surprise as much as it is a lot of us, but CBD has gone so mainstream. And we kind of want to get a better sense for athletes, what does it do? What doesn't it do? And so let's start with that.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I saw it coming in the sense that it's become kind of a hot topic culturally, but for me, we got into the marijuana business 4 years ago, and there's, it's more or less the same people in both industries. It's marijuana and hemp. I mean, the CBD that we sell online and in normal outlets, not necessarily through dispensaries, is hemp derived, but it's hemp and marijuana are the same plant. It's just a technical definition, a federal definition, incidentally, that's determines whether it's hemp or marijuana. And so having been in that industry and using it for myself, I got a lot of benefit from it. And so we have a decent amount of web traffic on our website, and we didn't have a way to capitalize on that. And so I thought, this stuff helped me. We should try to start selling it online. And we did that, beginning of 2017, and it's grown quite a bit and it's been good for us. But I mean, ultimately it's something that has helped me tremendously, just managing, old injuries and pain and inflammation, things like that. Yep, go ahead.
Floyd, you famously had a hip injury. Is that where this started, with your hip injury? And I remember that ball and socket joint got crushed in a crash. Is that where this pain management came in for you?
Yeah, that, and since I turned 40, things just ache from time to time for some reason.
No kidding.
Maybe that's just I don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But
wait another decade, dude.
Yeah, it doesn't appear to be going in the right direction, this trajectory, but it's along with my hip pain. I mean, I had been like a lot of people, prescribed narcotics after that hip surgery, and because I was going through all the other life drama at the same time that we've been over a few times now, I kind of got addicted to it, because it's easy to just sort of, even if you don't need it for pain, if you have it available, it's easy to sort of use it as a way to just kind of check out of life. And I started using marijuana, 5-6 years back to get off of that, and it worked. But what I did realize over time was that the high CBD strains were the ones that I prefer, because I don't necessarily like being high all the time. Some people like it more than others. From time to time, it's fun, but I don't get anything done if that's the way I choose to spend my day. So I started using just CBD to manage that, and it's been just tremendous. And I mean, the hip is the main thing that I've been dealing with. But I think racing your bike and crashing that many times over the years, it's not a great long-term strategy, put it that way.
Well, since you know both sides of the fence here, the marijuana side and the hemp side, what's the main difference as far as CBD is concerned between when it's sourced from hemp and when it's sourced from marijuana?
Well, the main difference is the legality, the federal legality, and also every state's got its own approach to how they deal with marijuana. But so what happens is, when you grow cannabis sativa L, which is that's the plant that is either hemp or marijuana, and it's purely determined by whether or not the plant has more or less than 0.3% THC by weight at harvest. So if it's determined to be hemp because it's less than 0.3% THC, then the CBD derived from that is now, under the new Farm Bill signed in 2018, is legal, with some deference to the state's regulations on manufacturing and cultivation and things like that. And it's not all completely articulated yet. The FDA is still trying to figure out how to regulate it. But CBD that's in marijuana, and there are plenty of marijuana strains that have, a lot of THC and also a lot of CBD. And those are, in fact, generally the higher priced ones, because they're a little more difficult to grow, and they don't produce as much bud or flower. However, if the CBD is derived from those marijuana plants, then it still has to be sold. It's still technically, just like marijuana, is illegal federally, although they've just simply decided to overlook it and allow the states that have legalized it to sell it. If it's derived from that marijuana, then it still has to be sold through a dispensary. or a licensed entity that's allowed to sell marijuana products. So that really is the only difference. It's exactly the same substance. It's legal derived from one plant and not legal derived from another variation of that plant. So it's a little confusing because there's a lot of information out there, but it's not been explained very well in any particular place it's easy to find.
Yeah, there is a lot of confusion between marijuana and hemp and CBD and THC. I mean, it takes a little while to parse and understand. And I think one of the most frequent questions you see is, will CBD make me high or anything like high? And the short answer seems to be, well, it doesn't have anything psychoactive in it. However, I mean, it does help me sleep, and it makes me. Does it make you mellow? I mean, what is the difference just in perceived effect between CBD and THC?
So it doesn't have the typical psychoactive effect that you associate with marijuana, because that comes from THC, and it's both are. I mean, they're analogs of each other. One has that specific psychoactive effect and an actual state change where you feel different. Some people with CBD with no THC still feel sort of a Xanax type feeling, like a relaxed, calm feeling, but their mind isn't altered in a harmful way or a way that's going to prevent them from performing normal tasks. But some people do get a noticeable relaxing feeling from it, and it does help with sleep for a tremendous amount of people. And that's one thing that people use it for, along with anxiety, which is typically when you can't sleep. It's because your mind is kind of, doesn't want to slow down, and you're thinking about, what you need to do, or your thoughts won't slow down, and it kind of helps to calm that. It doesn't necessarily make most people tired. It just makes them feel, it calms their mind and allows them to fall asleep naturally.
Now, Floyd, are all the Floyd's products with CBD, are they all derived from hemp? Yes.
We contemplated making some from marijuana and selling them in dispensaries. But the issue there is, and it's the main argument for legalizing marijuana, right, is that the sales tax is extraordinarily high on marijuana. In most states, including Colorado, it's over 20%. Some cities, it's 25% retail sales tax. So rather than sell it through the dispensary at an extraordinarily high price, we sell it other places and online. We sell it at bike shops, things like that. But because we do that version of it has to be derived from hemp, or we wouldn't be allowed to sell it legally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, essentially the federal government said, okay, hemp's cool, you can do hemp, and that allows Floyd's of Leadville to distribute online. If somebody's sitting in Minnesota or New York or Florida or wherever, they're thinking about doing the Leadville Trail 100, they want a recovery aid, they can buy it online and have it shipped to them all legally without having to go down to a dispensary or without having to go down to their dealer or whatever. CBD from hemp is essentially legal nationwide.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And there's the legality, or at least the enforcement of regulation of it is still kind of in flux. The legislation is written, but the agencies that would oversee these types of things haven't had the opportunity to set standards and things like that, but they're making progress. For example, a couple of days ago, we got a notice from the United States Postal Service saying that it's okay to ship, across state lines as long as we sign an affidavit, essentially saying that we've acquired the hemp from a state licensed cultivation facility or grown it at one. So there's still a lot of moving parts, but that's correct. It is now legal, and the federal government is addressing it as we speak. So yeah, it's available there, and it's available at bike shops and other stores.
Yeah, it sounds like this business is something that you are really having to remain agile, that there is not a lot of necessarily settled law around these products yet.
Yeah, that's part of the confusion, and part of the confusion is just people's understanding of what it is and where it comes from. It's not that complex if somebody that understands it simply explains it the way I did. Hemp and marijuana are the same plant. It's just purely a definition based on, testing at harvest, and that's it. And then once it's established as hemp, then it becomes much less regulated than marijuana would, which has to stay within a framework of licensed retail stores.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I am still confused by is some of your products are you're calling full spectrum CBD, and some of them are called isolate, or is that spelled, or is it pronounced isolate? I honestly don't know. But what is the difference, and which do I need to choose, just depending on my own needs, or what are the perceived differences?
Yeah, so isolate, a lot of these terms are just kind of made up as this industry is evolving, but so it starts with full spectrum. So you take just like you would the bud of the flower on marijuana. That's the part with the medicinal properties, right? That's what you want. That's what the desirable part if you want to get high. It's the same part of the plant that contains CBD on the hemp side in relatively high quantities. And so you take that and you process it by removing the fibers and the other organic matter from it. So you just have the oil that contains the cannabinoids. That's called full spectrum. If it's completely unaltered, when you just do that one step, you remove the oil so that you have this thick, dark looking oil that's got now at this point even a higher concentration by weight of CBD because you've removed some of the matter. But it also now has a slightly higher concentration of THC, because if it was 0.3% initially, it'll still have the same amount relative to the CBD, but it'll have a higher amount. So there is, if you use full spectrum products, you have and you're tested, say you're an airline pilot or somebody that works in an industry with a zero tolerance and there's testing, you have a theoretical risk at least of an adverse test result, because you do have a small, it's a trivial amount, but it's still enough that probably would be noticeable on a test. So full spectrum, but there is a belief that those compounds together have a sort of a combined effect that's greater than the sum of the two. So there's a market for both of those products. Isolate, on the other hand, is it's just, if you think about the word that you isolate, using chemistry or liquid chromatography, you can isolate the CBD compound and remove it from all of the oil and all of the other matter in that oil. So isolate is generally just a white powder, like you would be adding salt or caffeine or something to a recipe. It's pure CBD. There isn't anything else in it. So products made with that, if it's properly made, isolate, have no THC, but they also don't have any of the other properties that the oil has. And some people believe, like I said, that those have benefits. So we offer both. Now there's another version called broad spectrum as well now, which in this case, you just simply isolate the THC and remove that. And you use the remaining oil, which now has CBD and some other cannabinoids and whatever other properties that oil had. All it's missing from, if compared to full spectrum, is the THC itself. So there's sort of right now 3 different variations that you'll see marketed, and those are how the 3 are derived and what their different properties are.
Mm-hmm. Floyd, since these are the 3 most popular letters in this interview, CBD, let's take 10 steps backwards and explain what that stands for, and how do you pronounce it? What does it stand for exactly, and how does it pronounce?
So CBD is just an abbreviation for cannabidiol, and there are dozens, if not, hundreds of different cannabinoids that exist in nature, and cannabidiol is one of them. Tetrahydrocannabidiol is another. That's THC. That's the drug we talked about earlier that has mind-altering effects. There are other cannabinoids in marijuana and in hemp that have medicinal properties as well. They're just not as well studied because they're not as highly concentrated and as easy to derive in large amounts, and so those are less popular. But CBD has sort of become a cultural subject. But there are other cannabinoids in marijuana that have properties that would be desirable. It's just going to take time for people to sort of figure it out, because these generally in this country have not been studied on even a small scale until very, very recently, since it's been illegal. But it's a promising group of compounds that right now, obviously CBD is the focus.
And why does it work for us, for endurance athletes? What's the secret there? What's the connection to what we do and what CBD does for us?
Well, one of the things that there does appear to be a decent amount of data on is that it helps manage inflammation. So people often use it as a replacement for Advil and over-the-counter pain medications. It's probably not as strong as narcotics and things like that, but those also generally come with other negative side effects. So, we by the FDA's guidance, we're not allowed to make medical claims about it, but we do have quite a bit of anecdotal evidence that people have been able to manage considerable pain and inflammation from training and things like that, or even injuries using CBD, and have benefited from it.
Yeah. I know that my wife has been using all of my Floyd stuff up as she trains for the Lead Woman this year. All of the running volume she's doing, she's using the salves on her, or the balms, I guess, on her calves, and she's just loving these. So
I can't imagine how much she's been running. That does not sound appealing to me, to run 100 miles, but I will certainly cheer for her.
Yeah, it doesn't fit in my brain either. So, and that kind of leads to a question, because she's 120 pounds, I'm 165 pounds. How much CBD does it take to become effective for per pound of athlete, I guess, or what is the metric we should be using to know how much is enough but not too much?
Right. Well, as a result of the guidance from the FDA about making medical claims, we also have a hard time within that restraint saying this is how much you should be taking for a given problem. However, what we've seen is most people benefit from 25 milligrams. Most people benefit more from 50 milligrams or even 100. There isn't a toxic dose of it. There's probably a level where you'd get diminishing or negative returns. But people generally use, if you've never used it, a good place to start is 25 milligrams, and it generally has whatever effect it has on you. It will probably have that effect for, somewhere around 12 hours. So, people that use it for epilepsy, for example, there is an FDA approved drug that is made with hemp derived CBD. And those doses for people with extreme, seizures and things like that, those doses are extraordinarily high, in the thousands of milligrams at a time. So
wow.
There isn't a risk of toxicity, but there's probably a practical amount that's somewhere between 25 and 100.
Okay.
How about drug testing? If somebody's worried about if they're, say, they have a USAC license or what have you, or maybe they have drug testing at work, what are some of the concerns there, if any?
So the concerns there are if you're using full spectrum and there's THC, and assuming it is full spectrum, you would have a trace amounts of THC in it. And THC has a relatively long half-life, and used over time, you probably, in theory at least, could get to a serum level or urine level that would show up on a test. Now that depends on who's testing you. The current threshold that WADA has set for THC is extremely high. At one point, I think it was 40 nanograms per milliliter. Now it's up to 150. So, I mean, out of prudence, it's probably not a good idea to take it in a full spectrum product in a race or before a race, even though I believe that there's very, very little risk that there would be enough THC in there to make a difference. But any other time than immediately before a test or before a race itself, full spectrum would be fine. If you're using a broad spectrum and it's made properly, or if you're using an isolate product, you don't have that risk. The CBD metabolites are not identical to THC metabolites, and so the test for those would not confuse the two. So that's kind of the lay of the land on that. But if you really do have concerns and want no risk at all, then an isolate product is best.
Yeah. And for use, do you recommend more of a building effect, or is it more of a medicine effect? I guess, do you treat it more like a vitamin or a medicine where there's a cumulative or just a take as needed effect?
Most people treat it more like a vitamin if they're using it for managing anxiety and for sleep and things like that, because it seems to take a few days for it to start to have that effect on most people. If you're using it for just acute pain or managing pain, you can use it whenever it's necessary, and it works fine for that. So it kind of depends on what you're trying to accomplish with it. But certainly used over time, it's not harmful and it tends to be more effective.
Floyd, I've been using, like Fatty, all of your products. Great stuff. The capsules. I love the drops, in particular, the balms, the recovery, the protein powder. The one thing that did catch my eye was your hydration fuel. It seems a little counterintuitive at first that you have CBD in a hydration fuel. Why does that work?
Well, so we put a fairly low dose in that, and there's some people seem to get a sort of a stimulating effect with very, very low doses, like an energizing effect. But also if you're dealing with inflammation from training or pain from long efforts, endurance type efforts, then managing that inflammation while you're doing the exercise as that inflammation is increasing is a better approach than waiting till afterwards and then trying to reduce inflammation. It's similar to the way pain manifests itself. I mean, it's a lot harder to get rid of pain after it's there than it is to prevent it if you know it's coming, if you know what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. And so there's some belief that it's useful during exercise as well as afterwards for recovery.
Inflammation is an interesting thing because I know that there's some thinking that you want a certain amount of inflammation because it forces your body to respond to it and deal with it and get stronger. Are we in any way interrupting that process, or is just? I mean, I think inflammation is just too big to overcome with any product.
So yeah, that's an interesting question, and I don't really know if anybody knows the answer to that. What the amount of inflammation that is the proper stimulus for other hormones and other things that your body produces in order to deal with it, and what's too much. But generally speaking, if you're, it's one thing if you're 18 years old. I remember how that used to be. I didn't get tired and things didn't matter if I had inflammation, but now it seems to just take longer. And so CBD it's not magic. It doesn't prevent it completely, but it does seem to limit it to the point where it allows you to recover faster. But the real question there is a much deeper one that I'm not really sure I can answer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So final question here. So the desert island question. You're Floyd of Floyd's of Leadville, but you're somehow on a desert island. You can only take one of your products with you. What do you use most often? So, what is your favorite?
Oh man, can I take marijuana products with me, or do I have to take?
Hey, it's your company, man. You can take whatever you want.
No, I prefer the 50 milligram CBD capsules. Mm-hmm. The tincture is the same formula.
Yeah.
But the taste is pretty strong. I mean, it tastes like marijuana.
It is.
And so I prefer the 50 milligram capsules. 50 milligrams works pretty well for me, and I like the full spectrum stuff. So I think that's what I'd take along if given that limited set of options.
So maybe not a bad. Well, I mean that's a useful, I guess, piece of information for someone who is saying, I don't know where to start. Maybe
Sure.
that would be the thing to make in your first order.
Yeah, you will definitely get if you haven't tried it before and it is going to work on you. I mean, look, it doesn't fix everything for everybody, but if it is going to work on you, 50 milligrams will certainly have a noticeable effect.
And Floyd, if I'm on that desert island, I'm taking the drops. Now, the flavor is pretty strong in the drops, but tell me, why is it that I like the drops better than maybe the other products? What is it about those?
Some people don't mind the flavor, and some people even like it. I mean, I don't mind it. I like the effect.
So why is that effect so good for me?
Some people feel like it affects them faster because some of it possibly is absorbed through your gums as you put it in your mouth, rather than a capsule that just doesn't dissolve until it's in your digestive system. So there is a belief that it works faster that way and possibly even more effectively. But I get plenty of effect from the capsules myself.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Tinctures are endorsed by Hottie. Nice to know.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Floyd of Leadville, in Leadville. Thanks so much for sharing a little bit with us. Lots of good information there.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'm looking forward to seeing you this summer. It'll be a good time. And tell your wife good luck with her training. I would say try not to overdo it, but I don't even know how that would apply in this particular case.
Hey, thanks again to Floyd Landis for hanging out with us, and be sure to check out Floyd's of Leadville, our presenting sponsor, at floydsofleadville.com, and use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount on your first 2 orders.
Hottie, you're familiar with Park Tool, right?
Oh, of course I am. I own many of their products. Everyone who's ever worked on a bike knows about Park Tool. They're the best-known tools in the bike biz.
Yeah, this is not, however, a promo spot for them, but I want to ask you another question. Do you know who the CEO of Park Tool is?
Well, yeah, that would be a tough one, even on me, who I read incessantly all the stuff out there in newsland regarding cycling, but I don't know. I don't know who the CEO of Park Tools is.
Yeah, I didn't either until about a month or so ago. It's Eric Hawkins, and our friends at Banjo Brothers featured him in their 5 Questions blog series. Eric Hawkins is, of course, as you would expect, a cyclist, as well as an incredibly interesting and remarkably down-to-earth guy. So, for today's Banjo Brothers promo, this is not a Park Tool promo, I wanted to point you toward that interview, especially the What's Stuck in Your Craw section, where Hawkins talks about online comments, bike shops, and his perspective on tariffs, which, as you might expect, he has some opinions on. You can find that interview by going to the banjobrothers.com site, heading over to their blog, and then just, scroll down a little bit because this was a month ago or so, and get to the Eric Hawkins interview. Learn a little bit about the man behind the tools with that iconic blue handle.
And while you're at the Banjo Brothers site, why don't you support this great company by buying a bag? You need one. And you can get a 20% discount off your order by going to banjobrothers.com/fatty-favorites. Banjo Brothers is tough, practical, and affordable, Minneapolis-based, in business since 2003, and they're just good guys with good interviews. To get 15% off your order, go to banjobrothers.com/fatty-favorites. I hope everyone is hungry because we're going to talk about eating now.
Yeah, it's time to check in with our resident nutrition expert, Roxanne Vogel. She is GU Energy Lab's Nutrition and Performance Research Manager, and today we're going to talk with her about training to eat. Roxanne, welcome back to the Leadville podcast. Great to have you here again.
Hey, Fatty. Thanks for having me on again.
We want to talk about what you can do right now. Early months, still months away before Leadville, but there are things you can do with your nutrition plan to start preparing for the race. Tell us what we ought to be looking at.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, it's really important at this stage of preparation to kind of dial in your on-the-bike nutrition for what you're going to be looking at come race day. And I think the reason that's so important is because you really need to practice the amount and the type and the timing of calories and fluids that you're going to be taking in. Because if you get there and you haven't figured that out, then you're going to waste a whole bunch of time and energy and just stress yourself out trying to do that, night before or the couple days leading into the race. So really having it dialed will go a long way for you when you get to Leadville.
Roxanne, say we're testing out a new bar or gel shot or even a sandwich or some type of whole food. What's a good sample size? How long, how many rides, how many hours, how many bites until we know, that works for me?
5 bites, Hottie. Exactly 5 bites. No, I'm sorry. I'm being
so
facetious. I like to test out a new product probably a good 2 or 3 weeks worth of rides and things, especially on long rides, as anything that you can get to simulate as closely as possible race day conditions, whatever that looks like for you. But yeah, I'd say a good 2 or 3 weeks worth of testing that product and the intake level would give you a pretty good indication of whether or not that's going to sit well with you, how it makes you feel, energy levels, how it digests, things like that. So I usually say 2 to 3 weeks.
And since we are all working toward a very long ride, do we have to use whatever we're testing out for very long rides in order to be able to understand it? Or is there a way to shortcut that understanding of whether something works for us or not?
To be quite honest, it depends on the individual. Some people have kind of just iron stomachs and they can tolerate anything, anytime, no big deal. But a lot of people, and especially the athletes that reach out to me, tend to have a hard time once they get into, any sort of duration that's maybe 3 hours or longer, because of the way that your physiology starts to change after the first couple hours of riding, and blood flow and things like that are going away from your GI tract, and it becomes harder to actually absorb and digest nutrients at that point. So I would say you do want to test things out for longer rides, just because it can really change the way you digest, in those second, third, fourth, and onward hours. So for a lot of people, if they are only testing it in 1 or 2 hour bike rides, they might not get the full effect of what it's going to look like on race day.
And when it comes to practicing your nutrition, Roxanne, I would imagine you would encourage people to not only practice what they're doing on the bike, but before their rides too. I mean, have the breakfast you plan on having, because all those chemicals, all those foods kind of add up and stir up in your stomach and cause a reaction.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see every year is people going out the night before for a big old dinner at a restaurant, and it's like foods that they don't normally eat. And it just backfires so majorly the next morning when they wake up, and either they can't go to the bathroom or they have to go to the bathroom too much or things like that. So yeah, you definitely, aside from just your on the bike strategy, kind of what you're going to be doing the night before, the lunch before, and the morning of needs to be something that you've done in, previous either races or previous long rides, so that you know exactly what you're getting. So whether that means traveling and staying in a place that has a kitchen so you can make your own dinner, or traveling with a cooler of food that you are accustomed to eating, whatever you have to do to make that possible, I think is super important.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, food is only a part of the equation as we're preparing right now. How about supplements? What kinds of supplements should we be considering and or not considering as we are just sort of starting to get into the heavy part of the training season?
Right. So I think right now at this point, you still have a few months, and your training in recovery are going to be very important, because you should be getting into higher volume training. And so you're putting a lot more demands on your body than it's probably been accustomed to. So one of the biggest things I always recommend is making sure you're getting enough protein, right? So supporting your muscle repair and recovery, and that whole turnover process requires a lot more protein and amino acids than you might otherwise need. And so, people may not be getting that, and you might need to supplement with protein or amino acids. And so if you're not getting about 3/4 of your body weight in pounds in grams of protein, so say you weigh like 160 pounds, if you're not getting like 120 grams of protein, then you might consider doing a protein supplement or a shake or something like that after your workout, just so you can get to that level, just because your needs and the turnover of amino acids in your body is so much greater with the training stress.
How about protein on the bike, Roxanne, or partial proteins? And we've seen GU in particular introduce branched chain amino acids into a lot of their products. What are kind of the rules of thumb there as we're riding along regarding protein?
Right. So one thing about protein is that it can be a little bit difficult to digest and absorb when you're exercising. It does take more energy to actually break down proteins than it does, say, carbohydrates. So I don't typically recommend doing like a complete protein source on the bike necessarily, but if you wanted to do some amino acids or something like that, which are already broken down proteins, so they're basically like the most simple building blocks of proteins already broken down for you, you can do that instead. So you can do either an essential amino acid blend or a branched chain amino acid blend, which we do in our products. But yeah, so that would basically provide those amino acids to the working muscle while you're actually using them. So it's kind of like replenishing while you're using them. So it's a nice thing to do to kind of protect your muscle in the moment. So yeah, that definitely works, and that's why we've always incorporated BCAAs in our products. Yeah.
Right. And an interesting thing about BCAAs, Fatty, is that there's some evidence that they do help with fatigue in the middle of a ride. So again, I think Roxanne would agree, you don't want to overdo the BCAAs on a ride, but they can help. I think it's block melatonin Is that it,
Tryptophan.
Roxanne? Tryptophan. That's it. That's the fan I'm looking for, the onan I'm looking for. Right. During the middle of the ride. So that's why obviously GU has introduced those into some of their products. Now, here's kind of the sum up of this edition with Roxanne, folks. Again, you want to train, yes, your body, you want to train your stomach as well. Get used to what you can eat on the bike, before you ride the bike, afterwards. Give it about a 2-week time. And yeah, look for some good supplementation afterwards. Good protein right after your ride, and maybe a little partial protein while you ride. Next time we hook up with Roxanne, this is going to be great. Altitude. Look, we're all of us Leadvillers are obsessed with altitude. Well, Roxanne has the ultimate story about her trip to altitude, which is coming up soon. That'll be next time we hook up with Roxanne Vogel.
And we've got a lot more segments with Roxanne coming up soon as we get ready for the second Saturday in August. Ooh, it makes my stomach clench just thinking about it. In the meantime, if you want to start following Roxanne's advice on training to eat, why don't you go on over to the feed and get hooked up with some of their nutrition and other products that they provide. You can also get a nutrition box of drink mix, bars, gels, chews. Start trying different things. Find out what works and what doesn't, and adjust until you get things just right for yourself. I'd encourage you to try the Morton drink mix as well. Roxanne is, of course, well, she's with GU, not with Morton, but she is nevertheless a big believer in getting calories from your bottle. And the Morton drink mix is all about that. It has a light flavor, but it really packs a punch with either the 160 calorie and the 320 calories per packet system that they've got.
It's worth noting our podcast listeners can get a great price on a pack curated for Leadville racers, containing a lot of the items we just mentioned. Go to thefeed.com/Leadville for our Leadville pack, and be sure to use the code Leadville15 for a 15% discount. You can also use that Leadville 15 code for buying any amount of Morton at a 15% discount. Of course, both of us, Fatty and I, will be using that product again during all our races this year.
Yep. Once again, that is thefeed.com/Leadville, and use the Leadville 15 code at checkout.
Fatty, we're going to get to a new segment in a second here, and it will be all about wrenching, working on your bike. Our topics will mostly focus on the work you or your mechanic can do while your bike is in a work stand. But, there are times when you got to do things trailside. Something comes loose, something needs adjusting, something just breaks.
Yeah, I actually broke a spoke just this week on a ride. I didn't ruin the ride, didn't end it, but I do wonder if I handled the trailside repair properly. Topic for another time.
Right. The one thing I carry now is actually from our friends at Shimano. It comes from their Pro line of products, and it is a 22-function mini tool. Hardly sounds mini,
nice.
Does it, with 22 functions? It sounds like a toolbox, but it'll fit in your pocket. This thing is perfect for mountain bikers and adventure racers. It has 7 hex, and 2 Torx keys. That would be something else, 7 sex keys. Actually, 7 hex keys and 2 Torx keys, 4 spoke wrenches, screwdrivers, chain tool, tire lever, brake pad spreader. It's like a bike repair shop in your pocket.
Yeah, it is. That might be a little bit much to carry around on race day, but it is for sure good to have in your pit stops and during training rides. And Shimano has other multi-tools as well in its Pro lineup. They've got really, honestly, everything that you could use for whatever your riding situation is.
Mm-hmm. Go to bike.shimano.com for more. We will also have a link in the show notes for this episode at Leadville100podcast.com. Now, Fatty, we're happy to introduce a new segment here on the Leadville Trail 100 podcast, and that is mountain bike maintenance with Ryan Morse of Diablo Wheelworks. Ryan does bike repairs only. No bike shop distractions like customers wandering the floor or employees planning lunch rides. He used to do that. For 20 years, he was a bike shop mechanic and manager. Now, he is singularly focused on making bikes run better. So you'll be hearing Ryan on this show discussing what to look for and how to stay on top of the many things that need attention on your mountain bike. Fatty, I believe you are the type that needs just about everything handled professionally, right?
Yeah, I'm afraid that is more or less true. It's a problem for me too. There are times, different kinds of bikes, bike races and rides where I've taken a pass on them just because I'm not confident that I can repair my bike if I have a significant mechanical far from an easy bailout.
We kick things off with Ryan looking at 2 areas of your bike that can create a real annoyance. All right, Leadvillers, we're here with Ryan Morse, my mechanic, and the owner of Diablo Wheelworks.
Hello.
Here in the Los Angeles area. And today we're going to talk about what I like to call the big bearings.
Big bearings.
Headset bearings, bottom bracket bearings, what happens to them, why they're so important. Let's talk about these bearings in general first,
Sure.
Ryan.
Absolutely.
What do they do? What do we have to be paying attention to when it comes to these 2 big bearing sets?
Obviously, we want them working smooth and not making noise. Usually, we start to notice problems once things make noise, which at that point is sometimes a little bit too far gone. Noise usually means dry contact points and or worn out parts or both. So it's a good idea to periodically service these items along with many other parts on the bike. If you're comfortable enough doing these things yourself, great. I will heavily suggest having a proper torque wrench because a lot of these bolts definitely need them. But if you're ready to take them on, basic opening of the system, cleaning, making sure bearings are in good shape, feel smooth, and ultimately getting that system repacked with new grease back together and happy again.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to, let's first of all focus on the headset bearing. How do we get in there, and what can just the person who doesn't have a lot of mechanical skills at least do to keep these things nice and running?
Sure, for sure. Ultimately, you're going to be removing your stem and gaining access to the headset. A lot of these systems are reasonably easy to open up, clean, and or inspect and clean. So if you're comfortable with removing those bolts and, of course, having a torque wrench to do the reinstallation, I'd say go ahead, open those suckers up. Make sure that, you pull the parts out one by one and remember the proper procedure to get them back in the right position. Make sure to wipe them down as cleanly as possible. I don't suggest using a heavy-duty degreaser on the bearing. Maybe a little bit of alcohol and wiping dirt debris off, wiping the cups out of the bearings, and ultimately do an inspection, make sure parts are in good shape, get them back together with new grease, and get it torqued on the stem and go ride.
And kind of the same principles apply to the bottom bracket, right? If you can get your cranks off, get in there, clean, grease.
Correct. If cleaning and greasing does not take care of the issue, the noise, the excessive play, ultimately new parts are going to be needed. That's what that will be telling you. Little easier to deal with on a headset, let's say, than a bottom bracket, because there's a lot of different bottom bracket standards, as you well know. Makes it fun in this industry. But, I'd say if you're willing to take it on at a basic level and that doesn't take care of it, definitely talk to, your local bike mechanic, somebody you trust, obviously, that can take care of the issue.
What's the life expectancy of these bearings, headset and bottom bracket? What kind of time should we be getting out of them?
In a perfect world, I think we're lucky here in Southern California having good weather most of the time. You can get a couple years out of headset and bottom bracket, depending on a few situations, obviously. If you're a consistent rider, and especially if you're a racer, I would suggest doing some basic service on these items at least 2 to 4 times a year. And then, at least once a year, possibly replacing bottom bracket and headset bearings if they're needed.
And if I've been on a particularly muddy or dusty or wet ride, should I get in there right away?
It's always good to get in there if you have the time. If you can get the dirt, water, whatever has sort of been pushed into the system to contaminate it, if you can get there before it gets too far, you can usually save it. So yeah, good idea to do it.
And if you need further help and you're in the LA area, Ryan Morse, Diablo Wheelworks is your man.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan. And Ryan Morse, of course, has a website. It is diablowheelworks.com. By the way, he is also a hell of a wheel builder. So if you need something laced up for Leadville, he can get that done no matter where you live. Okay, let's wrap up Season 2, Episode 11 of the Leadville 100 podcast presented by Floyd of Leadville. If you like the show, give us a 5-star rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. Also, share it with your other cycling friends and support our sponsors, please. Let them know you appreciate them making this show possible. Meanwhile, if you have ideas or questions for us, head to the Leadville100podcast.com comment section and please get in touch.
Mm-hmm. And if you use Twitter, you can also get a hold of us that way. I am at Fat Cyclist. Hottie is at Michael Hutton. And Hutton is also on Instagram pretty often with the same Michael Hutton handle. We're both on Facebook, where we're both active in the Leadville 100 MTB participants group, obviously. And if you've got a question, friend us, DM us. There's a good chance we'll answer your question right here.
Good luck in your training. Thanks for listening, and we will see you at the start line.